This week on Conflict Zone, at least 27 migrants perish in the English Channel. Will this now force Europe to commit to safer migration policies?
I hope it is a catalyst, finally.
Guy Verhofstadt in Brussels, member of the European Parliament and a former Prime Minister of Belgium. If EU member countries can't agree on a life and death issue like this, what's the point of the EU?
Only on the EU level you can manage this.
As Polish security inflict water cannon and tear gas on refugees at their border with Belarus, what happened to the EU's much vaunted values? And what reforms are needed? Also, the trouble with Facebook and the need for a revamped NATO. All on Conflict Zone. Guy Verhofstadt, welcome to Conflict Zone. Let's talk first about the migrants who drowned last week, since that's the crisis of the moment. Do you think this is going to be the catalyst for some new European policies on migration?
I hope so, because this tragedy in the North Sea is not the first tragedy, and we have seen so many casualties, tragedies in the Mediterranean. Now this is happening on the North Sea. So I hope it is a catalyst finally to have a common European migration policy, because it's already more than 20 years that we are talking about a common migration policy, and it never happened, because a common migration policy could avoid the tragedies as we have seen last week.
France called for urgent talks to discuss this tragedy, but then it disinvited a British minister because it didn't like one of Boris Johnson's tweets. You don't do that if you're serious about finding solutions, do you?
I don't think that you start to do such talks with tweets. Huh? That's maybe the way Trump did his policies, but that's not the way we do it inside the European Union. So I think more important is to concentrate ourselves on what could avoid such tragedies. And again, there a change in the European migration and asylum policy is absolutely key. Like there is also a need for the UK, for the United Kingdom, to understand that they are now out of the European Union and they need to take their own responsibility for their migration and asylum policy.
Yeah, but I think they understand that. Recently. I think they understand that. I'm talking about diplomatic grounds.
I hope so. I'm not so sure that maybe you understand that. I'm not so sure that that the British government and Boris Johnson understand
that.
But
this diplomatic standoff may be great fun for governments, but the only people who are going to get hurt by this are the migrants. Isn't it time for everyone to stop playing games with these people's lives?
It's at the time now to do what most governments, especially also the British government, but also other governments, have always avoided to do. That is to develop a common migration and asylum policy that is based not on unanimity ruling, on a decision by unanimity, but on qualified majority, because that's the reason that we don't have the last 20 years a common migration and asylum policy. It is already since 1999 that we decided that migration would be a common policy in the Union. And since then, nothing has happened. And the first thing to do is to create and to establish a common legal migration policy, because many of these tragedies are the consequence of the fact that we don't have a legal migration policy in the Union. And the second thing to do is to have common asylum standards in the Union. So there is no shopping anymore possible. And the third thing to do is to really better manage our outside borders of the Union. The outside borders of the Union, yeah, and unfortunately...
I want to come on to the outside borders in a minute, but if EU member countries can't agree on a life and death issue like this, what's the point of the EU?
The point of the EU is that only on the EU level you can manage this. You see it with Britain. Britain cannot manage this alone. It needs to ask to the European Union to take action. Otherwise, tragedies will continue. Tragedies for people who want to reach and want to go to the United Kingdom. And the point is, our point is, as the European Parliament, we have already said for years, and I hope that in the next conference on the future of Europe, we will achieve that we need to get rid of unanimity. The problem is that, the fact that you need the approval of 27 member states before you can act. And in the meanwhile, such tragedies are happening because of this impossibility to go forward on migration policy, because the unanimity requirement that exists today.
Okay, but at the same time, while this is going on,
it's not the only field. It's not the only field.
The EU is facing a major credibility issue because it doesn't just sell goods around the world, it tries to sell values as well. And I'm wondering which values the EU was selling when Poland was filmed tear gassing helpless migrants on the border with Belarus and showering them with water cannon in freezing temperatures. Not the greatest advert for EU values, was it? Doesn't it make you want to weep?
Now you're not very objective in the way you put your question, because the problems at the Polish border are not a problem caused by the European Union or caused by Poland. That are problems caused by Lukashenko, by Belarus.
You think this was an appropriate way to treat the migrants, to tear gas them?
Use and abuse migrants.
Well, and they got abused by Poland,
I say
didn't
again,
they?
that's a problem that has been... it's a problem caused by Lukashenko, so it's not very objective now to inverse the roles and to do as the migrants on the border between Belarus and Poland are a problem that has been caused by the European Union. That's not, and you know it very well. And what we have done in the meanwhile is to try to have agreements with those countries where these people come from, so to avoid that they are abused by a dictatorship in the neighborhood of the European Union, as has been the case the last week and months. And you are right. I deplore, as you, the use of violence and death.
So some of the
like
deals, that you've entered into have resulted, and I'm talking about the particularly dirty deal with the Libyan Coast Guard, paid in effect now by the EU to hunt down migrant boats in the Mediterranean and take the people back to Libya, where their human rights violations are visited on them.
Well, I have to tell you one thing. Maybe next time you don't invite me to have your interview, you invite the commissioner who is responsible for that. Because exactly as a member of parliament, I have criticized this towards the European Commission. I'm not the member of parliament who have defended the policies of the European Union. So next time you take European Commissioner responsible for these matters and you ask him these questions. I'm as critical as you on the fact that this is happening. And that's the reason why I think that European migration and asylum policy needs to become a European Union matter, what it is not today. Because all elements that you have put forward, the problems in the North Sea and the tragedy we have seen in the North Sea, the problems at the border between Poland and Belarus, the problems in the Mediterranean towards Libya, and people coming from there and abuse there are all the consequence of the fact that our member states are responsible for that and the European Union is not. So it's not a question of the European Union, it's a question of a lack of European Union, a lack of European migration and asylum policy. But next time, my proposal to you is invite the commissioner responsible for it, because I am as critical towards what is happening in the Mediterranean and in the North Sea as you do.
You're critical about it. The media is critical about it. The reports have been coming in and going to the UN and human rights organizations for a long time, and yet nothing gets done about it. Why do you think that is?
Because, like I will explain for the third time or the fourth time now, that these policies, for the moment, are still policies of the member states, because there is no unanimity inside the European Council to change these migration policies. Even at the moment, when so many people, refugees, came from Syria and the conflict in Syria towards Europe, Mrs. Merkel said, okay, we are schaffen das, we're going to pick them, we're going to take them inside Germany. That was a national measure without consultation with the others. So we need absolutely a radical change in the way European migration and asylum policy is treated in the Union. And we have to do it in a common way. We have to do it on the European level, with a good border management, with common asylum and migration conditions, and with a legal migration path. Because a lot of the tragedies in the Mediterranean and in the North Sea are the consequence of the absence today of a legal way to come to work, to be active as a migrant in Europe.
You claimed earlier this year that EU integration has been enormously important, you said, to enshrine rules, rights and freedoms into our societies in Europe. But in a number of EU countries, those rules exist only on paper, don't they? And you're powerless, as you said, to do anything about that. Hungary and Poland, for instance, with all the rule of law issues. They know how to game the system, don't they? And they can paralyze it if they want to, hold up discussions on the budget, hold up this and that. So far from enshrining your rules, the EU is being strangled by them, isn't it?
No, absolutely not. There is a way to tackle this, but there is an unwillingness in the European Council, under the heads of states and government and under the prime ministers, to tackle that problem. What I expect is that with the new German government arriving, a government of socialists, liberals and Greens, that this new government will be far more critical on this issue. Let's be honest about it. Until now, we didn't tackle the problem in Hungary, we didn't tackle in Poland, because the European Council, under the leadership of Mrs. Merkel, was not capable to do it. The Parliament
you said they were gutless. You said they were gutless. They failed to have courage.
Sorry, the Commission launched a procedure on it, and the European Court of Justice also took its responsibility. The only institution who didn't take its responsibility was the European Council. And I think my expectation is that with the new German government arriving in power now, this will change, and we will see really a European Union who is active, using the instruments to make sure that the values in the European Union are also applied in countries like Poland and Hungary.
You've criticised European leaders for lack of courage, you said. The instruments, for instance, for dealing with rule of law issues in Poland and Hungary existed. The instruments exist, you said, only the courage among leaders is failing. So why do you think EU leaders are so gutless on this issue?
For the simple reason that in the Council everything is decided between them. I have never seen in the European Council, and I was a long time a member of the European Council, one colleague attacking another colleague, one colleague criticizing another colleague, one colleague sanctioning, I should say, another colleague around the table. That doesn't help. That doesn't work in the European Council. Therefore, I think with the arrival of a new German government, I think that we will see European Council far more critical towards what is happening in Poland and in Hungary. And on top of that, I think that in the future, we need maybe to change the instruments. And change the instruments, that means to give to the European Court of Justice the capability, the competence, not only to give judgments about what is happening in Poland and Hungary, but also to decide on sanctions. What is the case in every normal rule of law system in every country. So I think that fundamentally and ultimately it will be necessary to give a new competence to the European Court of Justice, to give them the possibility to decide on sanctions towards countries that are not applying the fundamental values of the Union.
You mentioned earlier the conference on the future of Europe, which you're co-chairing. Yet another inquiry into what Europeans want from their institutions. Has there ever been an organisation that did so much navel-gazing and introspection?
No, it's not. It's not consulting what they want. It's absolutely not that. What we are organizing with the conference on the future of Europe is an unseen exercise where we try to combine representative democracy with participatory democracy. The citizens who you're talking about, in totally 800 selected, randomly selected people, are not there to give their opinion and it's over. No, they are participating in the decision-making process. It's for the first time, I think, in a modern democracy, that citizens are directly involved in the decision-making process. That is what we are doing.
But
so
Verhofstadt, not many of them. Not many of them, are there? Not many of them. The numbers taking part on the digital platform are so small as to be almost irrelevant, aren't they?
I don't know. There are for the moment 4 million people who are on the platform, who have got access to the digital platform, the Conference on the Future of Europe. There are several tens of thousands who are on daily basis debating on the future of the European Union. And on top of that, there have been, in a scientific way, 800 people selected, and all these people have nothing to do with the European Union, to participate in the decision-making process. We have seen such what we call citizens' convention already in France, already in Ireland, already in Germany, but it's for the first time that it is organized on a pan-European level. And my expectation of this exercise is not to listen to the citizens, because we know what the citizens want. We have the Eurobarometer, we have surveys, like it's the case also in Britain. No, the big difference is that these citizens who are selected will continue to participate in not only formulating recommendations, but also in the answers the politicians will give to their wishes and to the recommendations.
You said to regain people's trust in democracy, we need to fundamentally revisit the way our democracies work so they are for and with the people. Instead of that, why not concentrate on results?
Yep.
Find a way for 27 disparate countries to pull together on the major problems that are facing them, something that they have conspicuously failed to do so far.
For the simple reason that the pressure that can be created by a participation of the citizens will be so huge that I am confident that we can find ways to break the resistance of some member states to go forward inside the European Union. We need the power of the people. We need the power of the citizens inside this conference to go through barriers, for example, the barrier of unanimity. And secondly, we need this new type of democracy, because our liberal democracy, your liberal democracy, our liberal democracy is under threat today. Under threat from outside the European Union, China, Russia, but also under threat inside, because of the social media. Social media like Facebook are undermining our liberal democracy. So a direct involvement of the citizens inside the decision-making process of the European Union is really the good answer, I think, a real answer towards this degrading liberal democracy through the social media as we see it today.
Why is Facebook undermining your liberal democracy? Why?
I think that's obvious. At least everybody understands that when you go on Facebook and you put, I don't know what, for example, Chinese Communist Party on your Facebook, that for the next 5 or 10 years you will receive mostly only posts and messages concerning the Chinese Communist Party.
Well, if that's the only thing you put in, yes, but if you put in a whole range of other things, you'll get references to them too.
Let me explain. The algorithms behind the system of Facebook are made in such a way that at the end people only see what they think and not the counter-argument. And that's a very good model to make profits in the US, maybe, in the United States, but it's a very bad model for the pluralism in our liberal democracies.
Let's come back to the EU. The question is often raised about accountability among the Commission. Do you believe that this Commission is accountable? How many of its commissioners ever get sacked? Once in its history? Once since 1958? Is there accountability in the Commission?
No, that's not true. That's not true what you're saying. You forgot to mention the fact that this Parliament, at a certain moment, has dismissed and put home a whole commission. once, and also a Commission president in the past. That's not true. So there have been many examples of that. But it's true that we need to increase the power of this European Parliament to make it a real European democracy. And the additional power that this European Parliament needs is power on taxation. That is something we are missing for the moment. And the second thing what we need is the right of initiative for this European Parliament to initiate new proposals. So if you tell me that there is not enough power for the European Parliament in controlling the Commission and in controlling the Council and in developing a number of policies, you're right, yes.
We talked earlier about what you called failing courage among Europe's leaders. In 2018, you went further and you said the Union tends to be rather weak in the face of global challenges. That was pretty much the case, wasn't it, when Donald Trump was president, allowing Europe to be lectured like naughty school children about NATO funding and who you could trade with and who you couldn't? Pretty degrading, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, but it didn't fundamentally change with Biden. Biden or Trump, both are criticizing the European Union for that. And for good reasons, not because there is not sufficient funding, but because there is not sufficient cooperation inside Europe. You know that Europe is spending more than China on military expenditures. We are spending in Europe, without even the UK, 4 times more than the Russians on military. The problem on military in Europe is not the level of spending. The problem is that we do it 28 times, 27 times now, after the Brexit, and that we duplicate everything 27 times. We spend more or less 35% of the Americans on military, and we can only do 10% of the operations of the American army. What does it mean? If you spend 35% of the Americans and can only do 10% of the operations, that you're 3 to 4 times less effective. And that's the consequence of duplication. So my plea is that as fast as possible we'll create this European defense community as a pillar of NATO, the European pillar of NATO. And that's the real answer to our geopolitical weakness, and not spend a little bit more of tax money as we do today.
But do you agree that one of the commissioners, Thierry Breton, said the other day that something is broken in transatlantic relations, and that's neither a reference to Trump nor Biden? Is the something that he was talking about temporary, or is the transatlantic alliance coming unstuck, irrespective of who's in the White House?
No, what I see is the absolutely need for a reform of the North Atlantic Alliance. And why I'm saying that, when Joe Biden is coming a few weeks ago to Europe, to the NATO summit, he's talking about China. He's talking about China that is in the South Pacific. No, that's not the North Atlantic. That means that our defense issues today are not related only to the environment in the North Atlantic, but are worldwide, and that there is a need to reform the NATO into a global world alliance of democracies. And that on a continental scale. That means that the North American continent, the Asian continent, the European continent has to do a real effort to create defense communities to defend our liberal democracies. So the NATO is today still an alliance of individual countries. And what I think is that we need to transform it into a real alliance of continental defense communities defending liberal democracy.
You want to reform NATO, you want to reform rules inside the European Union, you want to change the unanimity rule, you want a lot of reforms, and you want a federal Europe at the end of it, a sort of one-size-fits-all. What if you don't get any of these reforms?
That's absolutely not true.
How long has the EU got?
So you have a complete misunderstanding of what federalism is, because a one fit for all, that's not federalism. That's the opposite. It's the opposite. You see it in the United States of America. United States of America are 50 states with 50 different constitutions, with 50 different armies, and so on and so on. So when I'm a federalist, that's true, but federalist for me means that everything what you can do on the local level, you do on the local level. What you can better do on the national level, what you do better on the national level. But where there is an added value on the European level, that you have to do on the European level. And it's the only way for the Europeans to defend our interests, our values in the new world order that is emerging today. Is emerging, no, it exists already today. There will be a time where it will be the Chinese who will decide on our standards, who will decide on our way of life. And the only way to counter that is to organize a federal, democratic, in diversity, European continent, the European Union.
Guy Verhofstadt, it's been good to have you on Conflict Zone. Thank you very much.